Hi there. Hope you have a fantastic day today. This lesson, I will teach you how to evaluate inverse trig functions. Of course, there is a PDF file versions on the description below for you to download so you can work with me. Otherwise, let's go straight into it. First one. So we need to work out cos sine inverse of negative root 3 over 2. So first step is we need to evaluate this first. So to evaluate this, let me just write this down. So sine inverse of negative root 3 over 2. And for inverse sine, the range is between negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. Okay, that is the range. And we want to work out inverse sine of negative root 3 over 2 because of negative for sine. So it should be on the third and the fourth quadrant. But then on the third quadrant is outside of the range of inverse sine. So therefore we ignore that. So this is the angle we're after. And to work out this angle here, so let's just work out the reference angle, of course. So we just go inverse sine of root 3 over 2. And you should get 60 degrees. But we know that 60 degrees is pi over 3. So this is pi over 3 is the reference angle. Okay, so pi over 3. But then we need to work out the angle measured from positive x-axis to this line here. So we should have a negative. So therefore, sine of inverse negative root 3 over 2. So will give me negative pi over 3. So now we just evaluate this. So this is exactly the same as cos of negative pi over 3. Because sine inverse of negative root 3 over 2 is negative pi over 3. Now to find out cos inverse of pi over 3, please keep that in mind. This is exactly the same as cos of pi over 3. Because it's on this quadrant here, if you like, cos is positive. So cos of pi over 3 is a half. So therefore the answer is a half. So there you go. Otherwise, let me show you a different method. So see which method you like, okay? So first of all, let's theta, the angle theta is sine inverse of negative root 3 over 2 first. So let theta is sine inverse of negative root 3 over 2. So therefore, sine of theta must give me negative root 3 over 2. So because of negative, we know that in this quadrant and this quadrant. But because for inverse sine, so the domain for that is between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. So therefore, we cancel that one out. So therefore, it's only on the fourth quadrant. So this is theta. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite is root 3. And the hypotenuse is 2. So sine theta is opposite over hypotenuse. And we can work out this length here. Let's say this is x. So from Pythagoras theorem, we just go 2 square is 4 minus root 3 square is 3. So 4 minus 3 is 1. And square root 1 is 1. So this length here is 1. So now we just need to work out cos of theta because this angle here is theta. So therefore, let me just clear this first. So this is exactly the same as cos of theta because sine inverse of this is equal to this, which is equal to theta. So keep that in mind. And then we know that cos of theta in this quadrant here is positive. So that will give me cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is 1, hypotenuse is 2. So the answer is 1 over 2. So there you go. Second one. So sine tan inverse of 1. Again, we just need to evaluate inverse tan of 1 first. Now, because for tan inverse of 1 and 1 is a positive, so it will be on the first and the third quadrant. And we know that the range for inverse tan is between minus pi over 2 and pi over 2. So therefore, the answer should be on the first quadrant, okay? Because it have to be between minus pi over 2 and pi over 2. Now we just need to work out inverse tan of 1. So inverse tan of 1 is 45 degrees. But we know that 45 degrees is pi over 4. So we just write here. So pi over 4. That's the angle here. So now we just work out sine of pi over 4. That's equal this, of course. And we know that sine pi over 4, that is sine 45 degrees, is 1 over root 2. So the answer is 1 over root 2. There you go. Otherwise, you can just do the other method. So let me just show you one more time. So let angle theta is equal to tan inverse of 1. So therefore, tan of theta must give me 1. And we know that tan theta is positive. So in this quadrant and that quadrant. But then for inverse tan, it's only between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. So therefore, we ignore the third quadrant. So now, let me just construct a triangle. So this is theta. That's the reference angle. Tan is opposite over adjacent. So 1, that means 1 over 1. Because opposite over adjacent. So 1 over 1 is 1. And from Pythagoras theorem, so this one here, the hypotenuse, 1 square plus 1 square is 2. So the answer is root 2 here. So this means that sine tan inverse of 1, which is exactly the same as sine of theta, because theta is tan inverse of that. So now on the first quadrant, so sine of theta, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite is 1, hypotenuse is root 2. So therefore, the answer is 1 over square root of 2. So there you go. Now, sine inverse of sine 2 pi over 3. So for inverse sine and sine, we can cancel each other out. However, we need to note that the inverse sine, the range for that is negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. So this is outside of the range. So therefore, we need to convert that into the same range for inverse sine. So let me just convert sine of 2 pi over 3 into acute angle first, okay? So we know that sine of 2 pi over 3. So 2 pi over 3 is from here to here is 1 pi. So a bit less, okay? So this is from here to here is 2 pi over 3. The acute angle will be pi over 3 because 1 minus 2/3 is 1/3. So this means that's 1 pi over 3. So pi over 3, okay? So in this quadrant here, sine is positive. So this means that sine of 2 pi over 3 is exactly the same as sine pi over 3. So now this is exactly the same as sine inverse of sine pi over 3. Because sine of 2 pi over 3 is the same as sine pi over 3. Now, because pi over 3 is within the range of the inverse sine, so therefore we can just cancel each other out. Don't forget this is brackets here. So that will give me pi over 3. That is the answer. Otherwise, you can also evaluate sine of 2 pi over 3. And then whatever that answer is, you inverse sine of your answer and you should get pi over 3 is what? 60 degrees, right? 60 degrees is pi over 3. So keep that in mind. Part D. So cos inverse of sine 4 pi over 3. So what I do, I evaluate this first. So let me just write this down. So we have sine of 4 pi over 3. So 4 pi over 3 is from here to here is pi. And then we add another pi over 3. Because if you think about it, 4 over 3 is 1 1/3, right? So 1 pi plus 1/3 of pi. Keep that in mind. So that's 1/3 of pi. So there you go. So sine of this is negative. So therefore, sine of 4 pi over 3 is exactly the same as negative sine of pi over 3. And we know that sine pi over 3, that is 60 degrees, is root 3 over 2. So the answer is negative square root of 3 over 2. So there you go. And then what we need to do is we're just going back here. So that is exactly the same as cos inverse negative root 3 over 2. And we know that for negative cos, it should be on this quadrant here. So it should be on the second and the third quadrant. However, for inverse cos, the range is from 0 to pi. So therefore, we ignore this quadrant here. So we need to work out this angle here. So now we just need to work out the reference angles. That is this angle here. So we just go inverse cos of root 3 over 2. And we should get 30 degrees. Or 30 degrees pi over 6. So this is pi over 6. So therefore, the answer is from here to here. So therefore, 1 minus 1 6. So we get 5 6. So the answer is 5 pi over 6. So there you go. Please pause the video and try this one yourself. Hi there, I'm back. How do you go? So let me go through them with you, okay? Before I do that, please do not forget to give me a thumb up and subscribe if you haven't done so you can help me to grow my channel. So let's get into it. First one, cos inverse of cos of negative pi over 4. So we know inverse cos and cos, they cancel each other out. However, it has to be within the range of the inverse cos, okay? So at the moment, negative pi over 4 is not within the range of the inverse cos. So therefore, let me just convert cos negative pi over 4 into the range of the inverse cos first, okay, if you like. So we know that cos of negative pi over 4, so we know that negative pi over 4 is in this quadrant here. And therefore, reference angle is pi over 4. So therefore, cos of inverse negative pi over 4 is in this quadrant, cos is positive. So therefore, this is exactly the same as cos of pi over 4. So therefore, let me just write this down. So that is same as cos inverse of cos of pi over 4. And pi over 4 is within the range of the inverse cos, because we know that the range for inverse cos is 0 to pi. So that is the range for inverse cos. So therefore, we can just cancel these two out. So therefore, the answer is pi over 4. Otherwise, you can simply evaluate cos of negative pi over 4. And then you can just inverse cos of whatever the answer is. And you should get the answer. Okay, keep that in mind. Part B, tan and cos inverse of negative a half. So let me just evaluate this one first, okay? Inverse cos of negative a half. So we know that for negative, so therefore it has to be in this quadrant and this quadrant because negative a half. However, for inverse cos, have to be between 0 and pi because for the range. So this is cancel out. So we know that the answer should be from here to here. And the reference angle is this reference angle here. We just go inverse cos of a half and we should get 60 degrees. But we know that 60 degrees is pi over 3. Pi over 3. And we know that from here to here is 2 pi over 3. Because 1 minus a third give me 2/3. So the answer is tan of 2 pi over 3. Now we just need to evaluate tan of 2 pi over 3. So tan of 2 pi over 3. So in this quadrant, tan is negative. Because this is S. So psi is positive. So tan is negative. So that becomes negative tan of the reference angle. That is pi over 3. And we know that tan pi over 3, that is tan of 60 degrees, is root 3. So the answer should be negative square root 3. There you go. Part C. So we need to evaluate inverse sine and sine of 7 pi over 6. So we can evaluate this first. And then we just sine inverse of whatever that answer is. But then we can also convert the 7 pi over 6 into the range of the inverse sine. And we can just cancel from there. So let's just get into it. So we know that sine of 7 pi over 6. So 7 pi over 6 from here to here is 1 pi. Because 7 over 6 is 1 and 1/6, right? 1 plus 1/6 if you like. So 1 pi, and we have another 1/6 of a pi. So this is pi over 6. So in this quadrant, sine is negative. So therefore, this is exactly the same as negative sine of pi over 6. And we know that sine of pi over 6, that is 30 degrees is a half. So therefore, it is equal to negative a half. So this is equal to sine inverse of negative a half. And for inverse sine negative, so it should be on the fourth and the third quadrant. But then for inverse sine, the domain is from negative power 2 to power 2. So we can ignore that one out. So therefore, this is the angle we're after. Okay. So we know that inverse sine of a half is equal to power 6. So this is power 6. So therefore, the angle will be negative pi over 6. Don't forget, okay, because it's measured from the positive axis and go until you hit the line. That's the angle. And because it's going clockwise, so the answer should be negative. Okay, so the answer is negative pi over 6. So there you go. I hope you got all of them correct. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.